Okay, today we're going to walk through how you might um, export your data from Corpora in order to do something else with it. And this can be because you're intending to migrate away from Corpora onto a different platform. It could be because you want to take the data from Corpora and play with it in other tools and do things with it. And so I'm going to walk through a few methods for getting your data out of Corpora. The first is if you're only interested in, say, the data from one of your content types. You can also always just kind of go to the content type you're interested in on this kind of content tab of your dashboard. Click the check all box. And when you do that, everything gets selected and this little kind of bar appears. And you can choose to then export your data as either JSON or CSV. Now, I will say that Corpora supports things like multi-valued fields. While this content type does not have that issue, let's see if we can find one. Okay, here's a good example. Sources here has this source author field, and it's multi-valued, okay? So if we were to export a CSV, CSVs are inherently tabular, and so they're not really built to keep track of cells with multiple values in them. But the way that Corpora goes ahead and exports the data anyways is by putting a little kind of pipe character in between values in a multi-valued field. So that's just something to keep in mind. One of the drawbacks of using CSV files when your data source can have multiple values. All right, so that's one way to get your data out. Another way, let's say you want to just go ahead and export everything. Then what you're going to want to do is to go here to the admin tab. And of course, in order to see this, you've got to be an editor on your corpus. But on the admin tab, you can see, a bunch of things. The content type manager, where you can kind of edit your schema and whatnot. But if you scroll to the very bottom, you get some corpus management options. And one of those is to export corpus data. So when you click that button, it automatically selects the relevant task for exporting corpus data. And it gives you a couple of options here. By default, a corpus data export will always include JSON representations of your data. But you have a couple options here. You can include CSV representations of your content. And for those of you who aren't really familiar with what a CSV is, it means comma separated values, and it's really just a kind of format that a whole lot of programs can use to open up spreadsheet data. So Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets or what have you should be able to open your data if it's exported in CSV. This option, what it's going to do is it's going to go through every single piece of content in your corpus, and it's going to create a static HTML web page representing that piece of content. So if you have thousands and thousands of records, this will effectively create thousands and thousands of HTML files. It will also create an index page that allows you to click to kind of a tabular way to explore your data, which we'll get into, but it also gives you links to download JSON And if you exported CSV, it also gives you links to download CSV for any given content type. But let's go ahead and start this process. I'm going to click Run. You get a little notification here saying that a job was submitted. And if you scroll to the top of the Admin tab for your corpus, you can see that a job is currently running. And most jobs come with reports that you can view. There's not a whole lot of information provided when you're exporting your corpus, but it at least tells you kind of where it is in the process. So it has already exported JSON and CSV representations of the data, but it's now going ahead and kind of doing that HTML export. This, again, will take quite a lot of time if you have a whole lot of data in your corpus. This corpus, I would say, is on kind of the medium end. It has, 8,000 performance records. And so exporting all of those is definitely going to take a minute. Okay, but it does look like it went ahead and finished. So with this notification, you get a prompt to refresh the page, which would be a good idea. So we're going to go ahead and click that. When you refresh the page, unfortunately, it takes you back to that Content tab. So you have to go over here and click Admin again to get to the Admin tab. But when you scroll all the way down, notice that above the kind of buttons here, you've got this link that says download exported corpus data. So I'll go ahead and start that download. I will say that once your data changes, like once you go into your corpus and start adding new data or editing existing data, this exported corpus data file will be out of date. So if you want to sort of refresh that export at any time, you can always go back here to this button that you initially clicked, except now it says refresh exported corpus data. When you click that, same sort of thing. It's sort of asking you what you want in your corpus data export. And that will, once that finishes, that will refresh this here. Okay. So let's see, I'm going to need to share a part of my screen. Well, okay. So it downloaded a file called export.tar.gz. And this is a file that's been kind of compressed and in such a way that usually like Linux-based operating systems are very familiar with in terms of how to decompress. I will say my Mac, when I double click on this file, it has no trouble decompressing it. And so what we're going to see is if in our Reclaim hosting account, if we can't upload that sort of export file and decompress it on the server, which will prevent us from having to upload thousands and thousands of individual files. So we have here a sort of shared hosting account. So I'm going to click Login to cPanel. And this takes you to cPanel, which is kind of a dashboard for managing your Reclaim hosting sort of services. I'm then going to go here to File Manager. And I'm going to, let's go inside this static folder. Now, I created this static folder and I associated a subdomain with this folder. Most people might just want to go into the public _HTML folder instead. But for my purposes, I'm going to have to go into this static folder. And I have already uploaded just a simple index page, so I could test to make sure things are being served out correctly for me. But so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is upload that export file. So I'm going to choose it here. I'm going to go into my downloads, and I'm going to choose that export file, click open, and it very quickly uploaded that for me, which is great. Let's go back to that static folder, and now we see this, this file, this export file that we uploaded. When I click on the export file, notice that up here, this extract kind of item becomes available to click on. And that's really what we're going to want to do. So I'm going to click extract, and it's going to basically ask where I want to extract this to. And I think just sort of leaving it in the static directory that I've uploaded that file to is probably the way to go here. So I'm going to click extract files, and it's sort of telling me everything that it is exporting. And here we have, those thousands and thousands of static HTML pages that were generated. And it could be that we're already complete here. Looks like perhaps that has completed, which is great. So close. And if we go into our export directory, you'll see everything that got kind of bundled into that export file. Okay, so one issue that we're going to have to deal with, however, before we actually kind of take a look at our website, is that we're going to need to move all of these files kind of up a level, because currently they're inside of this export directory, and really these sort of files, HTML files, are expecting to live really kind of at the root of a website. So what we're going to do is, I guess, go ahead and click select all. We're going to click move, and we want to move them to the static folder instead of the export folder. So I'm going to click move files. That's going to empty out our export folder. And now when we go back into static, we'll see these sort of files that were previously inside of export. So we could go ahead and just delete this export directory. We don't need it anymore. It's empty. And since we've already extracted all of our files, there's no reason to keep this compressed export file just taking up space on your web server. So we're going to go ahead and delete that as well. Okay. So now that we have our website uploaded into the correct folder for our purposes, again, most people will want to put all of this in public HTML instead of static, but we will go ahead and visit the website and see what it looks like. So again, we have this set up that goes to that static folder. Most people would just use the domain they purchased from Reclaim as the address. And this is kind of what it looks like. So what you have is a bare bones kind of website with the title of your corpus, the description of your corpus. And then for each content type in your corpus, you have the option to browse using a table, which we'll get into in a minute. You can download the CSV file that was exported, download the JSON file that was exported. And actually what the table uses, what it draws from in order to allow you to browse, is this last file. So unlike this file, which will only represent cross-referenced content with ID, this file actually has what we call a cross-reference content stub, which is actually a kind of nested object that contains not just the ID of the referenced content, but also the label, the URI, and I believe any other fields that are kind of in the Elasticsearch index. So this is particularly handy for use by the JavaScript table in the page that we'll take a look at here in a minute. In fact, let's just do that now. I'm going to open this in a new tab so we can come back to this. But basically, what you have is a simple mechanism for kind of paging through your content and searching. It's a very responsive kind of search. And of course, you can open any record, and it will, of course, put the kind of name of the field, or at least the label that you gave each field, with the value there to the right. And any cross-referenced content is also a link that will take you to that piece of content as well. Okay. So let's talk really quickly, though, about what happens when you're working with a content type that has quite a lot of records. So all of these, there are a substantial number of records, but they're not so much that a computer couldn't easily kind of pull in this entire JSON file, load it into a table, and allow you to kind of search it responsively. When you have so many records, though, that a computer, you know, that the JavaScript basically couldn't hold all of that content in memory in order to perform searches and whatnot, we have to take a slightly different strategy to allow people to browse using a table. So if we open this, you may encounter a little bit of a lag as it has to go out and pull basically the first 500 records off of that giant JSON file. So unlike the other table where everything's loaded into memory, when you page through records, it's just pulling that next kind of chunk of 500 records. So again, it may take just a moment. Also, you'll notice that the search is not nearly as responsive as the other table for two reasons. One, when you type, it doesn't just automatically filter. You're going to have to click this apply filter button. The reason why is every time you perform a search, it's basically going to pull down chunk after chunk of that JSON file until it finds enough search results to fill this table. So that may take a moment, but you know, as far as just having the ability to search such a giant file using nothing but static website like JavaScript, etc. This is, you know, again, much better than nothing. It's kind of a compromise, right? Where you don't have a powerful back end to do your searching, but this website can exist pretty much on any web server. You don't have to have, you know, a very fancy, you know, full-blown web application to access your data. So here I've just filtered all the records by this keyword York. Um, and so every one of these records will have York in it somewhere. Okay. But otherwise, this is just going to work like the rest of the kind of tables, right? One last thing, even when exporting to these flat files, you'll note that Corpora tries to do its best to do something intelligent with the data types involved. So there was a coordinate kind of data type associated with the theater content type. And so instead of just giving you the raw kind of coordinates, you actually have a little bit of an interface here to kind of browse exactly where those coordinates were. So again, this is very bare bones, but that was mostly intentional. The point being to provide the user with the ability to style these things however they want with a little bit of CSS and still have a way to browse a data set that was built in Corpora without having to hire a programmer or kind of do anything fancy. You're not just sort of stranded, right, if should you need to migrate away from Corpora. Okay, that's basically the Corpora data export functionality in a nutshell. And this kind of serves as instructions, right, for how you might take that export, upload it to something as economic, right, as a Reclaim hosting account, and still have access to browse and search your data. Okay,